Hello friends, so this is the tax time of the year. All of us are getting ready to file our 2024 taxes. So I want to talk about some important updates in regards to that. And then this is also an earnings season. Pretty soon we're going to start to get a lot of earning reports. We already got some earning reports from banks, and a lot of people are excited about that. And now we also have new presidency, which is focused on growing businesses. We already saw a few announcements, so we got to talk a little bit about that as well. So that will be the topic for today. So please stick around and learn something interesting today. So once again, my name is Deepak, and I'm a tax code advisor. Anything that you hear in today's video is not an investment advice in any shape, way, or form, or any other important information that you may feel like it's a complete research on a particular company or a particular equity or anything like that, then that is incorrect. These are just simple opinions about the way I look at the markets. My interpretation can be completely wrong, so you should not rely on that. Anyhow, that's my legal disclaimer, just to make sure that people understand that I'm not trying to give you an investment advice in any way. Having that said, now that you're clear on that, so let's talk about some important deadlines related to taxes first, and then we'll jump into the earnings season and what kind of things we need to pay attention to. So I think if you stick around till the end of the video, you are going to get a lot of value today. So number one, we are January 24th. So January 31st, by the end of the month, we need to issue 1099s to anyone we paid more than $600 to in cash, check, PayPal, crypto, in any way you paid them, except the credit card. Credit card is an exception because credit card company will issue the 1099 automatically. So we don't want to issue a 1099 if you paid by credit card. But any other way you might have paid to somebody else, that we need to issue on my 1099. Now, if you paid to somebody who is an S Corp or C Corp, that means they're registered with the state, then you do not have to issue them 1099. But how are you going to know that? The only way you're going to know that if they have given you some paperwork. Problem is, most people, when they pay out to people, they don't collect proper paperwork. So that creates a problem. So every time you're paying somebody, have them fill that W-9 out, so that way you know what kind of entity they are. So when the tax time comes, you can either issue them a 1099 or choose not to do it. So extremely important. Now, if you don't issue them 1099, then penalties are actually pretty bad, and penalties are per missed 1099. So they start a little bit low. If I remember correctly, I think they start at maybe $130 or something like that, and then they increase every month, and then I think at certain point they go almost $500. So they're pretty bad penalties. So please don't quote me on that. I don't have that data handy, but they're anywhere between $130 to $500, depending upon what time you get that notice. So be careful. So that's important. Got to take care of that. Another one that is very important is BOI report. Now, some of you guys, if you're keeping an eye out on it, there's a legal battle going on BOI right now. Federal government says, hey, we want to know who are the owners of these entities that are being set up by the state. And states are saying, wait a minute, this is our business. People set up LLCs, S Corp, C Corp with the state, not with the federal government. Federal government has to do with taxes. For that, people get EIN number. But for everything else, it's a state matter. Why is federal jumping into this matter? So there were injunctions, for now, that we don't have to file the BOI report, but injunction was lifted yesterday. So I think that is creating some confusion in people's mind, whether they need to file the BOI report or not file the BOI report. So the answer, as of today, is there are other injunctions still in place. So in one case, injunction was lifted, but there are other cases. I think there's several cases out there right now. So we still don't know which way it's going to go. But basically, the injunction that was lifted did not say that BOI requirement is unconstitutional. That injunction simply said that, hey, this particular court does not have a jurisdiction or does not have power to put a nationwide ban. That's the idea right now. So they're saying, look, for whether it's constitutional or not a constitutional, go back to the federal court and figure that out. So we still don't know any information on that. I think the arguments are still set in March, but that's one case. There are several other cases out there. So I don't know which way it's going to go. And then on top of that, is Trump even going to push for that? Maybe he will decide not to touch it at all. So for the time being, injunction is still in the place. We are not required to file a BOI report, but if you don't want to deal with the drama, you don't want to feel that headache which way to go, then you can voluntarily file the BOI report. So that's another important one that you got to take care of. All right, next we got to start preparing for our tax documents. And for that, we had a webinar scheduled for tomorrow, but we are going to postpone it now till February, mainly because we don't know what other tax updates we're going to get from Trump administration. I was hoping that Trump will tackle taxes a little bit later in the year, but seems like he has expedited everything. Like the guy is on fire. He's signing executive orders, like seems like every minute there's a new information. I guess we don't even really need Netflix anymore. We can just watch news these days and be entertained. So anyhow, that's just a joke, by the way, in case you didn't get it. Anyhow, my point is that it is possible that we might get some interesting updates related to taxes in next week or so. So that's why I thought maybe it's a good idea to postpone it till first week of February, and then we deal with it at that point. Hopefully we get some interesting updates. And there's so many things that he has promised. You know, for example, he wants to reduce the corporate taxes. I don't know what is he planning on doing on tariffs. He has threatened that the tariffs will take place on February 1st. Whether that happens or not happen, and how are they going to impact everything else, we don't know. So we'll find out about that in the first week of February. And then he has talked about reducing corporate taxes. So that's interesting, extending the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So that one is coming. Then he have also introduced some interesting policies, such as the reducing or getting rid of Social Security taxes, getting rid of tips taxes, and maybe he has some other agenda planned out as well. So we're waiting for all that information. So that's so we're going to talk all about that in a live webinar format in February. So hang in there with us. Let's just get some more clarity on it, and then we'll prepare you to file your taxes. In the meanwhile, if you need some help filing your taxes, you're still welcome to reach out to me. Just go to taxcodeadvisors.com. If you don't need consultation, if there's not a major problem that you need to solve, you just need to file your taxes, just book a free 15-minute discovery call. I'll find out what kind of, how complex your return is, and we'll give you the pricing on the phone, and we'll get you wrapped up right away. So at least get in the system so we can get your tax returns filed in the month of February. You know, comes March, April, things start to get really, really hectic. So I would rather take care of you now than later. So that's another important update. Next comes down to financial world. I think you're going to love this. So I am hearing a lot of noise these days, and I want to make sure at least people who listen to me are grounded. They are not getting distracted with a lot of noise that is making people, very greedy and having them make some crazy decisions. So I'm going to talk about some very basic principles, okay? So number one, presidency. A lot of people are betting left and right on stocks that will benefit from Trump administration. Now, my personal view on that is just because a particular administration has one kind of policies do not necessarily mean that it will materialize into financial profits for a company. So pay attention to that. Such an important basic financial point. For example, if we go back and take a look at Biden administration. In Biden administration, he promised green energy. His focus was on solar. His focus was on EVs. Now you tell me, how many EV companies really benefited from that policy, especially for investors? And for that matter, how many solar companies benefited from Biden pushing EVs? Solar or EVs, either way, right? I think most of us will agree that industry did not, at least the investors did not benefit from that push from Biden administration, okay? I just want to point out, doesn't mean that whatever push President Trump going to do will not impact the market. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if you are betting your entire portfolio because of political belief, that can be a critical mistake. That's what I want to warn you out from, that be careful. It does not necessarily have to materialize. At the end of the day, stock market always focuses on fundamentals. Companies needs to generate profit. Company needs to grow. If they're not able to do that, they're not able to generate profits, then eventually things balances out. For example, I think a couple of weeks ago we were talking about SoFi, and I kind of gave you all bunch of reasons why I still believe it's speculative stock and why why I'm still investing in it. So I kind of give you all those reasons. But since I talked about that company, I thought maybe the main points I'm trying to convey, maybe I'll talk about that in relation to that company, just because we talked about it recently, so you get a little bit of a practical example for it. So SoFi is an interesting company, right? They are lending a lot. So what do you call them? Do you call them a bank, or do you call them a marketplace? Do you call them a fintech? What do you really call them, right? That itself is not quite clear yet. And it's probably not going to be clear for many more months. So I want you to go back and think of Amazon. When Amazon first launched, what were they? They were supposed to be a bookseller. In matter of fact, it was an online bookseller. And then later on, that company became into an e-commerce for everything else. And then it became a marketplace. And now you can literally buy anything on Amazon. So I think companies like SoFi or HIMS, I think that's the direction they're trying to go in. But we don't know if they'll be able to crack that model just yet. So there is some confusion around that. So if you hear somebody, oh, this is the next best thing in the world, this can happen, that can happen. Yeah, anything can happen. So many other companies try to become Google. So many other companies try to become Amazon. But there's only one Google and there's only one Amazon. A lot of those companies failed. So the point is, just because a company is showing a promise doesn't mean they will get there. So always understand that, so that way you don't get excited because of a greed and you don't get depressed because of fear. You need to still go back, understand the fundamentals. So for example, if you're not listening to earnings call for a particular company, then you shouldn't really be thinking about investing in that company blindly. Right? Just because somebody said something on YouTube or somebody, said something on a WhatsApp chat or things like that. You need to go back to the fundamentals. You need to look at those earnings report and figure out, well, what is this company talking about? What kind of growth are they talking about? What kind of financial targets are they talking about? What kind of guidance are they giving? How good their management is? How are they performing? Have they been true to their words? How do they see the world 5 years from down the road, right? If you can see that from Amazon perspective, you can see that from Google perspective, you can see that from Microsoft perspective, But smaller companies are even more clear into what they are trying to do. Why? Because they need your capital more than these big companies. So you have a lot more information than you think you have. So if you're a small investor and you hear about a particular company, I'm giving an example of SoFi, but it could be any other company, maybe a Palantir, maybe Amazon or whatever company that you're interested in. You need to go back to these basics. Figure out the growth opportunities, figure out the target, figure out the guidance, figure out the management. What are they trying to do? What you don't want to do is pay too much attention to YouTube videos, pay too much attention to news articles, pay too much attention to influencer, pay too much attention to analysts. So many times I hear, oh, analyst downgraded this or analyst upgraded this. I have no idea why the analyst said so. It's always a vague statement. I cannot make any sense out of it. So I usually ignore it altogether and I just simply focus on what the company is telling me. Because if company lied to me, most likely company going to get in trouble. Analyst, on the other hand, hey, this is just general information. And just like the way I said it in my video, that you should not act on it. So if I should not act on it, why should I listen to it anyway? It is irrelevant, right? So why do I care about what price targets they give? Another important point is what I have seen, and you might have noticed it yourself as well. What would happen is analysts will say, oh, the stock is going to be $200 at the end of the month. And then there's a momentum and a lot of people are buying it. People are really excited. Now the same analyst says, oh, it's $250. All they're doing is adjusting their price based on the current market conditions. Anybody can do that. If you know the weather right now, I'm pretty sure you can estimate the weather 2 hours down the road or 4 hours down the road because you have the current information. That's exactly what are doing. Now, next day, let's say weather changes, your prediction changes. And that's what analysts are doing. The moment the prediction changes, the momentum changes, they change their prediction. So once again, I don't really focus on those either way, positive or negative, because all they can do, let's say, and it's nothing about Kramer per se, but I'm picking Kramer's name because he's a huge influencer and a lot of people follow him. Let's say he says, this company is bad and the stock going to crash or whatever, right? Some sort of negative news. His followers will probably take that as a hint to sell that particular stock, and stock will go down because he said so. But only for a short period of time, because it has nothing to do with fundamentals. Now, if there's something wrong fundamentally with the company, that will have a long-term impact. And I do worry about that. But just because somebody else said so, if it's going to have an impact, it'll be a very short-lived impact. So I don't pay too much attention to that. The attention should always be, at least for me, is on business fundamentals, not about the hype, not about what AI going to do or what Trump going to do or what analysts are saying. I can care less. All I care about is what is Amazon doing? What is Google doing? What is SoFi doing? What is HIMS doing? Whatever company I'm investing in, I'm trying to pay attention to those basic fundamentals. I don't really care about all of this other crap. Another problem that we got to pay attention to, and I'm bringing all this up because it's the earnings season, and I don't have time really to write a lot of notes these days. Been busy with taxes. For us, tax season has already started, so I'm recording all this in video format, so it's out there. So at least the people who follow me, they can get some help from these notes. And these are probably worthwhile notes for writing. I think these are basic fundamentals. If you start, even if you're not investing in stock and you just start looking at the world the way I'm saying, you will become a better investor. Now, am I saying that you are going to pick the best stock in the industry? Probably not. I honestly speaking, nobody knows. Nobody knows who is going to be the best stock. So I don't care. I'm not in that competition, right? All I'm trying to do is figure out something better than what I can get in an ETF. That's the only reason I would be investing in an individual stock. Because if I don't expect it to be better than ETF, then might as well stick with some ETF. So all I have to do is figure out which companies are going to grow better than what I think market is going to do. So let's go back to example of SoFi, since that's what we're talking about. If somebody says, oh, this stock is going to be $50 or $100 or $200, or this is the only stock you need to retire, you can hear about that from any company. There's plenty of information around that. You can hear that. The problem is those guys have no idea what that stock going to be. You don't know. Like, for example, what multiple are you going to give to SoFi? Is it going to be 10x their earnings, 8x their earnings, 15x, 20x, 25x? Or is it like a SaaS-esque? Maybe they're growing so fast that you want to give it 30, 40, 50x their earning. What is that multiple? If I ask you, would you be able to come up with that multiple today? Probably not, right? Nobody really knows what that multiple going to be to look like 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, 4 years down the road. Why? Because we don't really know what this company is going to become. It's still a baby. It's still growing. Company like Amazon, Google, maybe you can come up with some decent ballpark figure for what multiple you want to give them. How? You simply look at the averages for last 5 or 10 years, whatever you believe in, that what their most recent business model reflects, and you can figure that number out. But for growth companies, small companies, it's very hard to predict that number. Some people might say, well, majority of SoFi business is just lending. How much money can you really make in lending? Are they really any better than any other bank? So why should we give them a multiple more than the bank? So maybe the multiple should be 8x or 10x or 6x, whatever. And somebody might say, oh, wait a minute. It's not really a bank. It's really a marketplace like Uber or like Airbnb. So why can't we give it a multiple like 25x or 30x? Somebody else might say, well, you guys are all wrong. That's not true. SoFi is a software company. Everything is driven by software. They don't have hard costs like a bank does. They don't have to give out commission to host They don't have this other problems that Airbnb or Uber has to deal with. They don't have to invest a lot of money in this and that. They can. So I'm going to say, well, this company is more like a high growth software company, like a SaaS company, and I'm going to give it a multiple like that. Okay, so there are all kind of thinking can happen in people's head. Problem is nobody know what it's going to be. It is possible that maybe right now you're paying too high of a multiple. It is possible. And then later on, once the dust settles and people figure out what that company is going to look like, they might say, you know what, we're going to treat it like a bank, multiple going to be 10x. And now, unless that company grows profit high enough, the earnings high enough, you might not make as much money. So how do I know what it's going to look like? I have no idea. We are talking about looking something into future. So that's obviously not in my control, so I'm going to ignore it. What am I going to, what do I really control? I control, well, let's take a look at the profitability. How have they been doing with their profitability for last quarter, last year, last 2 years, and how are they going to continue to grow that? So I can figure that out, right, by looking at their history. That is in my control. I can look at what kind of guidance have they been giving, and are they beating those guidance or they are not beating those guidance. Again, that's number available to me. I can take a look at that, and based on that, I can come up with some estimate. I can take a look at what industry they are in. Well, obviously they're lending a lot. So how is the lending industry going to look like in next 2-3 years? Well, if interest rates comes down, that means the lending is going to increase. More people are going to borrow. Imagine, take me an example. If I was able to borrow for a really low interest rate and I find another tax practice or some other business that I'm interested in, wouldn't that entice me to buy it? If that business is producing me 20%, 30% ROI every single year, and if I can borrow it for, let's say, 3% or 4%, that's pure profit for me. Why wouldn't I do it, right? So there's a lot of hype around that Trump is going to do something like that. It's going to make it easy for people to be able to borrow. How is not yet clear. So I cannot make my decision based on that hype. So I'm going to keep that in mind, but I'm not going to give it a high points. All I'm saying is if the interest rates come down, this company is going to get a tailwind. And another part is, well, what is the probability of interest rates going high? At this point, I would probably put it at low. And again, because of that, I would say, okay, at the bare minimum, it's going to perform the same as it is, or it might get better. And lastly, I'll take a look at the statements given by the company itself and figure out what are they talking about, for 25, or what are they talking about 26, and based on that, I will make my decision. Now, what happens is typically most stocks are either overvalued, right, and most of the time, and sometimes they are undervalued, and very little time they are fair valued. So we need to see which cycle are we in. And sometimes they can stay overvalued for a long time. Why? Because the investors believe that even though we are paying premium for it, this company will justify that premium in next 6 months or 12 months, in a short period of time. So it's okay. I don't want to compete with all the people once the stock is up. Imagine, for example, let's say Palantir, because it's a very popular company. A lot of people have been talking about it. It's involved with IRS. It's involved with government contracts. It's most likely going to benefit from this 500 billion AI investment that President Trump is talking about. A lot of data centers being built. Obviously, these data centers going to need energy as well. So that means, mini nuclear plants or nuclear energy stocks will benefit from. So there's a lot of tailwind going on. But the point I'm trying to make is, at this point, a lot of that hype is already built into the price of the stock, right? So at this time I jump in, I'm taking more risk than what I would have done last year. So if you can start building your position early on, when the stock is super cheap, it's much more beneficial, because even if you're wrong, you can get out of it making nice profit. But if you're right, you can make tons of money. So imagine you were able to buy Palantir for $15 or $20, and now you got 2,000, 3,000 stocks. I mean, now you can take some risk. Now you can play around with Palantir. It kind of gives you an advantage. But my main point here is this, that if company says that, okay, we are going to do this, and they beat that expectations, stocks are skyrocketing. And if they don't deliver on what they say, then they tank. So we don't know. Nobody really knows which way it's going to go. That's why we listen to the earnings call. And if you listen to the earnings calls and you don't like something on the call, you can get out and cut your losses super fast. Versus if you don't do that, you wait for a long time, and maybe eventually you will catch on and you go, oh, why this stock, it dropped by 5% yesterday, it dropped by another 5% today, it dropped by another 10% today. What the heck is going on? So I hope this kind of gives you some basic understanding as to how you can look at these earnings calls. Now I can probably talk about it for another 2 hours and get into a little bit more details as to what's important in the earnings calls, what's not. But I think if you just understand these basics, that pay attention to the earnings calls, pay attention to the profitability, pay attention to the path to the profitability, pay attention to what will make them profitable, what will make them lose money, how are they going to build on their cash positions, how are they going to grow, have they been true to what they have said in the past. If you pay attention to these basic things, then guess what? You do not need to rely on other people's advice. Relying on other people, like for example, you go in a group and somebody says, well, XYZ company is doing very well, or it's doing very well. The problem is you don't know at what price they acquired that stock. Maybe at this point, maybe it's not even risky at all for them. But somebody else, it could be extremely risky. So we cannot depend on what other people are saying. We have to be able to figure this mystery out for ourselves. The biggest reason I'll give you is if you depend on other people, then you will never have a conviction to hold on to a company for long enough. You're going to sell out when that company drops by 30%, maybe 40, maybe 50, maybe 60, maybe 70. I'll give you an example of Amazon. If I remember correctly, after Amazon was launched, and then we ran into that financial crisis, Amazon stock, I think, lost 90% of value. So many people did not understood Amazon at all, and they got out. If they would have just hold on at that time, they would never have to work again. So all I'm saying is, to get really good, to get wealthy in this country, it's so easy because new great companies are born every single year in this company. Just because you don't know them or you haven't been able to find them, it's just because you haven't learned how to pay attention. You don't have to, watch this video and make that decision tomorrow. You don't. You can spend a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to sharpen your skill. Each time make a guess, write it down, put it on paper. Here are my reasons. Go back year down the road, at the end of the year and see if your thesis was correct or not. What was right about it? What was not right about it? You can make guess again 6 months down the road. Shoot, if you're not spending on your money, you can guess every single day and figure out how often you're right. And what you will notice is after a while, picture will start to emerge for you. Are you going to get every single one of them right? Probably not, but you don't need to. If you get just some of them, if you can get 2 or 3, shoot, if you can get one Amazon right, you're all set, aren't you? Right? So anyhow, that's what I talk about. These are the kind of basics that we need to pay attention to. And if we get really good with this stuff, I think we can make a wonderful wealth in this country. So I hope you find this information helpful, but please, as I said, none of this is an investment advice. Use it as educational purposes only, nothing beyond that. And try running some experiments with it on your own with fake money until you get really good, until you're able to make your own decisions. Before that, don't listen to me. Don't listen to some influencer. Don't listen to analysts. Don't listen to the news. It's waste of time completely. Unless you learn the language of business, it makes no sense to you at all. So anyhow, thank you so much for spending your last 30 minutes with me. I hope you're going to find this information helpful. And if you do, please share it with your friends and family members. And if I can help you with your taxes, hey, don't hesitate to reach out to me on taxcodeadvisors.com. And I will see you next time.